All right, before we start our next match, we just want, Scorch and I just want to kind of go over the bracket and look at a few interesting things that have been going on. Uh, is there anything you want to really point out here, Scorch? I mean, I see a few things, but I kind of want to figure out what you see
I
first.
it's tough to call, upsets in that way because you're looking at the top 32 point earners from the past season, right? So you're looking at players who are expected to be high up, expected to win most of the time that you see their name. But I mean, we've had some really interesting ones. I'm really just looking forward at what potentially could come. We have, Cheholic Summerflame, Rizo versus Happy Joe, Sunkichi versus Chief Brahman would be a phenomenal one as well. And just setting up for really interesting matchups in the following rounds.
Yeah, we have a very interesting matchup coming up here for you guys. We have Minocaro and Werfs. Minocaro taking down Dekunut 3-2, I believe, was the final match score in that match. And Werfs, a big surprise, going up against XJed, taking the win off of him 3-0. So it's going to be really cool to see how Werfs and Minocaro match up here. But looks like those players are just about ready to hop into the game, so I'm going to throw it back over to Scorch and Matrian, who is joining us for this next match.
Let's see how we do.
Yes, Matrian, welcome into the cup today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and I am faced with 4 ciphers in front of me right now on the deck selection screen.
Yeah, Werfs bringing out potentially the mind games of just, those, even just looking at deck number 2 and deck number 4, almost exactly the same, 5 neutral, 25 red, 3.8 to 3.7, pretty close.
What is that 0.1?
Werfs running Cypher's Wrath at minimum in every single deck. On the other side, though, Minocaro, we see 2 mono greens, as well as
both Feed the Forest.
Potentially a burn, and blue jump, maybe blue control. Minnow banning away that first deck from Werfs, which has green, red, and yellow in it. Doesn't even want to see what that potentially could be. Werfs having a little fun with it, just going back and forth.
He is excited to be in round 2. That's for sure.
It's really interesting when players run 2 very similar decks at how the opponent bans. Because in this situation, Werfs is looking at banning one of these greens potentially, and you kind of have to get a read on what one or the other would be. But if you don't feel like your lineup is good enough that you have to ban one of against those decks that you have to ban one of those, you can't ban both. So I feel like you should just ban something else and just hope that you can pick up the right matchup to get the wins over those.
I am curious why he decided to go with the average 3.8 cost instead of the 4.1. Since he's playing a lot of red, he doesn't really want to see bulky creatures, right? I can see why he kept the blue deck, because that could be favorable. We'll see how we...
Yeah, as we get into game number 1, Werfs, as previously mentioned, took down XGed. Minocaro took down Dekunut. That matchup sounded like it was a very interesting one. From what I was seeing in some of the Discord discussion channels, Minocaro was up 2-0. Deco brought it back to 2-2, and then Minnow was able to close out game number 5. So showing off a very well-rounded lineup, it looks like, coming up from Minocaro, whereas Werfs was just able to take everything with just one deck. Both players here starting out with yellow and red, potentially... Yeah, it looks like a burn coming out from Minocaro, maybe more of a control because we see that flying in the movement coming out from Werfs.
Oh, Thunder Eel. Exciting to see that. Has some mobility with that Fanatic and the Drake Rider.
Big thing here will be if Minocaro is able to get some of his early creatures down and get that control going over the board and get that burn damage starting to pump through. Werfs just may not have the healing in this deck to actually be able to survive later on into the game, and then we eventually see potentially something like a Scourge Flame come down and just end it. No information shown so far from Minocaro. means that if Werfs goes for this Soul Pact, if he needs it, he's actually going to play into Minocaro's game plan. So that's either going to become potentially a dead card in hand, or it's going to be just playing towards what Minocaro wants it to do.
Now, interesting placing that Bloodsinger on the opposite side. Werfs could technically move the Drake Rider up and then Fnatic it straight to face and get the buff. I saw Mino hover over that left mountain. I'm not certain why he placed the Bloodsinger on the other side.
Yeah, big thing there is even with the movement, he would have been able to attack, potentially not getting the Corrupt charge, but still able to attack and have something else to clear off the Bloodsinger. Playing this way meant it needed to be, I think, 2 movements. No, I guess still would have been just 1 movement to be able to hit the Bloodsinger on that side. So I think he was just more going for trying to play around the Bloodsinger getting cleared. It just gives up that pressure, like you mentioned.
Yeah. I wonder if he just ignores the Lion goes face. If he's got Cypher's Rafts, probably Flame Bursts too.
I mean, even at this stage, you could double Cypher's Wrath Laya. I think you have to clear. If you attack in, it doesn't set up great for eventually clearing the structure if you don't clear it right now, but does have the potential that he could go double Cypher's Wrath to kill off Laya. He potentially could have gone Soul Pact and used the Thunder Eel as well, but he would have had to step back to collect with the Drake Rider instead of either clearing the structure or dealing more damage to the orb.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable using those too early on because Laya just was played very early in the game, and Werf still has a lot of potential to. Well, let's see what this Gyarados. That's going to knock out his Collector in the bottom left, but Thunder Eel hits Flyers, right? What? I can't remember the ability.
It's if they're over an ocean tile, so it won't deal 4 damage right now to Gyarados. It will deal just 2. But potentially this is a situation where Werfs goes for like a value trade, though. He can kill Gyarados or he can kill the Bloodsinger. But it just opens up a lot for Werfs in terms of control right now. The Thunder Eel is in a position where it potentially attacks the orb next turn. Minocaro just having to respond, and because he had to +1 into Gyarados, had Gyarados in kind of an awkward spot.
I mean, having that early mountain in the top left from Werf's mobility trick, it's so solid. He's on a well now, poised to go straight face. Mino really will have to body block him up there, or just remove it with that. But
yeah, interesting choice there, because Minocaro could have gone for body block with potentially like a Bloodsinger, and then that set up into a really good Cypher's Wrath. This sets up, he had to use a Flame Burst, which does reduce the max potential burst that you have at the end of, to aim to end the game. But this sets up for a better body block where the Bloodsinger in hand now survives to the Fairy and still represents killing it off. So this does set up a little better for Minocaro going later and later into the game.
Destructive Volley might not be too useful at this point. I wonder if he might.
Really tough in this spot. I think you draw to try to get like a Fnatic for a movement trick.
Right.
Getting that Fairy cycling is so important, but you potentially could just make a Desert Windborne Emissary aggressively.
Right.
I don't know if Minocaro there going for the +1 was too kind of like too much information of he had a Hellfire, or if Werfs is potentially just thinking Minocaro something like a Ground Shaker or something along those lines.
So do you Hellfire or Flame Burst? Or Bloodsinger and Flame Burst? And just continue body blocking the Fairy.
I think I still like Hellfire here. If it kills everything, it needs to deal 5 damage to all of those, so it's 4 to the orb as well as 2 more from killing the creatures. I mean, it's more unlikely to kill the Emissary because it has that 1 extra health. But even if more of it goes to the orb than hits the creatures, that means you've dealt more damage to your opponent's orb, and you could go for like a Flame Burst to win the game. But Minocaro going to go for what is, I would say, is the safer play here, going for just the Flame Burst.
And I'm picking up that Fnatic. It's a little too late. He can't activate the Shadow Stuff's ability. I like that he's still holding on to Hellfire. I don't think he can play it next, let's see, up to 5, 6. No, he could +1 into a next turn and really just go face with a lot of that damage. I mean, dealing 9 damage, if Werfs has to drop something on board, and they're pretty low defense creatures, so there's still a lot of potential for face damage.
Yeah, I think this will be just attack into the Guardian and play another Fairy, and Werfs will just play for kind of slow, set up maybe a Fnatic next turn, set up something else coming out from whatever he draws. I think now it has to be the Hellfire. There's so much potential damage that can come out here. Just 2 Bloodsingers on board, as well as the damage that Hellfire is just going to naturally do. There's another one, and it kills both creatures.
That's it.
Flame Burst in hand for Minocaro means it will be game over next turn. Werfs put the pressure on, and Minocaro was just able to stabilize from there. Werfs not able to find that extra little bit of kind of control that he needed.
Yeah. I mean, Bloodsingers really, you get to see how strong they can be in a deck like this. All that chip damage.
And there it is. The Flame Burst comes through, and you know, kind of as I mentioned, those Flame Bursts being used onto creatures decreases the amount that you can eventually have as bursts later on. But for Minocaro there, it wasn't necessarily about having those to deal the damage to the orb. He had the Bloodsingers on board, so it was just controlling. He waited, very patient with waiting for the kind of correct time to use the Hellfire, what was the optimal time to get that card out, get the most damage, and he was just able to close out the game that way. So we'll see Minocaro on that burn for this game as well. Werfs going to one of his mono reds. Has 2 very similar decks, as we mentioned off the start here. We'll have to see if this is... Werfs have a lot of destructive volleys, actually, in his lineups. Wow. We saw 1 come out in that previous game, and then 2 in the opening hand there. So really expecting to see a lot of flyers, it looks like, what Werfs has gone for as his opener.
Early Divine Guardian's okay, just since it's a great collector and can earn its costs back pretty easily.
Yeah, efficient early collector that can't be targeted, which is a really big one. Minocaro has a Firebomb in hand, which potentially could be Bloodsinger Firebomb on this turn to clear an early collector, but because it has Divine, he's not able to actually go for that clear, so this Guardian will actually survive. And
wow, removal for days. Look at this.
This looks like very much like a red burn coming out from Werfs.
Right.
Whereas we see Minocaro has some yellow in his. This is a true mono red coming out. So
it is. Yeah, I want to say he had 5 neutral cards. So 3, if we assume 3 Divine Guardians, 2 Destructive Volleys. Yeah, that's spot on.
Yeah, it's some combination of 3 and 2 of those 2 cards, I would expect. Garridan picked up here is pretty good, but he just doesn't have quite enough. Maybe another pass turn here from Werfs where he goes for a Garridan Hellfire next turn. Could Garridan Cyphers?
Yeah.
Yeah, the problem for me is that it doesn't remove everything. And you would... If you were going to Cypher's Wrath Laya, because then Laya would kill Garridan, the Bloodsinger still survives, and it's going to double collect, which doesn't change from if Werfs waits a turn.
Okay.
Because in that situation, the Bloodsinger would be left as a 2/1. It's still going to step down exactly the same as it did. Now Werfs can wait, go for the Garridan here, collect, and go Hellfire.
Let's see it. My goodness.
and a lot
Mino
of
has-
damage dealt to the orb. No
Right?
creatures in hand for Minocaro right
Yeah.
now. He does have the ability to remove Garridan, and that actually will be pretty big because the Shimmering Statue that's alive comes back, will bring back that life over time. So all of that damage that Hellfire just did eventually will come back around if Werfs isn't able to put up the pressure.
Right.
We see the Firebomb in hand, so of course that can be used onto the statue, and that will deny that. But potentially could have been a situation where, again, that's kind of why we see Laya is the creature by itself is very powerful, but the Shimmering Statue left behind in a matchup like this, if left on the board, can actually recover that life and turn the game around where you eventually survive the max burst that your opponent has.
Oh yeah, it's easy to forget about that Shimmering Statue. There aren't many cards in the game that leave something on board. These hands are just ridiculous.
All right, so tons of removal in hand for both players. Will Werfs beforehand go for the attack? And he does.
Oh my goodness.
Of course, because both of these creatures are divine, none of these cards in either player's hand can target them, except for the Hellfire that's in Werfs' hand because it's a random. But 0 attack creatures can attack. We've seen this with debuffs on things like Emperor's Command. We also know it because of Kaleem's Follower exists, which is a 0 attack that can actually attack.
Oh, finally a creature.
And we see the move and attack again.
Attack. Oh, this
Hellfire
is
actually loses a bit of value here for Werfs. Could have gone for it last turn and basically had a 50-50 on killing the Divine Guardian. But in this situation, it loses a little value because it can deal damage to the Derelict Tower. But all right, Hellfire coming down from Minocaro, where Werfs didn't go for it. Minnow will, and it does clear off the Divine Guardian.
All right.
Start pinging away. Minocaro technically only needs 1 damage right now to win the game. He has 2 on board from the Derelict Tower. He has 9 in hand from the Flame Burst. Brigands are so ugly to play in this situation, especially with the Derelict Tower on board, because it's ping Cypher's Wrath, and you really don't want to take more damage that way.
Right. Oh my goodness. Just the battle math involved in figuring out, do I attack the creatures on board? Can I get away with going face? It's tricky. I
mean, the thing is, the Brigands that are in Werf's hand right now normally are played because they're efficient at collecting, and they're also good for recovering their Feria cost through their combat effect. But Werfs doesn't actually need the Feria or the Collector right now. He just needs his creature to not be killed by a Cypher. To give him enough time to eventually draw in fire, potentially. Maybe he's going to go fire. Just doesn't do enough here. All right, let's clear both towers. So that extends magic and for flame from it, but doesn't mean we can't stop creature. Himself up to the
this other Divine Guardian from Mino is, I think we have it here. This this game has been amazing. All these events in hand, and Mino will take it. Absolutely ridiculous. Game number 2.
A full stalemate on what both players were going for, what they were actually looking for, and
wow.
Kind of as I mentioned, eventually Werfs gets to a point where he has to play something out of hand, has to get one of these creatures down, and that opens him up to the Cypher's Wraths, and Minocaro able to, has the cards in hand, he's able to take it. Looked like I was getting a bit of audio issue there through Discord, so I apologize to anybody if my voice was coming through really weird through that last game, but hopefully will be resolved now.
Yeah, it sounds much better now.
All right, so again, we see Minocaro on this red-yellow burn, Werfs with Potentially maybe an angry or more of a heavy red control with the fire elementals in there. Usually you only see that if you're trying to get up the board as quick as possible, get those axe grinder positions, or in something like an angry deck, because again, it plays much more rush focused.
Yeah, it looks like he's trying to get that axe grinder spot next turn by dropping a mountain in the left and then an explorer, and then using fire elemental to accelerate an axe grinder spot.
Here could play both. Fire elemental into the axe grinder.
It's a solid play.
It is because Cypher's Wrath is now really good as a fire elemental, but you get the buff on the axe, which is to clear the opponent's fire. So potentially both could be cleared. Minocaro, he doesn't have the one. Cypher's Wrath will pick off the fire elemental, and that starts to play back around the other way of clearing creatures and Werfs not having creatures. What this deck wants to do, Minocaro, it has all of these events to just clear creatures as soon as your opponent plays them.
Yeah, no play there by Werfs. Aware that Minocaro has removal in hand and doesn't want to waste any turns on board. Wants to make sure he's ready to respond. It's similar to the last game that they're just waiting for each other.
Really nicely played by Werfs here to be patient, though. Recognizes that Minocaro has the ability to go for a Garridan, so he didn't play the second axe grinder there.
Right.
That potentially could have been cleared very easily from Garridan coming down, potentially something else, or it just would have got the value from that. But interesting.
I'm surprised.
Really, yeah.
Oh, okay. You want some more solid body there. That makes sense.
Right, really good pickup from Werfs of the top deck. Could have gone Bombslinger, Cypher's Wrath to clear off Garridan, but because he has the ability to reinforce with an axe grinder here,
right,
he goes for that instead of the Bombslinger. Bombslinger, as you mentioned, or axe grinder gets that more stats onto the board. Bombslinger very weak to things like Cypher's Wrath, like the Derelict Tower that we've seen.
Great to see Ulani, Defender of the Oversky, in Mino's deck with this kind of burn deck where you are sitting back and waiting and not playing. You've got a lot of removal. It's easy to activate Ulani's ability. Mino getting that chip damage in slowly but surely with Bloodsinger, but does not have an immediate answer to this Bombslinger that's going to go face. And it is an angry iteration of red, so we've got that Firebringer coming down. Ulani's not going to get great value on this turn. Wind Soldier is going for the draw. Wind Soldier and Flameburst aren't really optimal, but I feel like he has to, just because he doesn't want to take... Oh, I forgot he could collect there, yeah. He's waiting for the Hellfire. All right, it's risky, right? Because now Werfs can set up that another Axe Grinder, or just remove the... This is going to be tricky. I think he has to go for the Hellfire, right? And hope it hits both. But still, Werfs should have a lot of removal in hand. Taking down a 4 might not be that difficult. All right, so Axe Grinder plays it there so that another Wind Soldier can't collect from it, it looks like. But it does place him one away. Oh, but he does have the Silent Horsemaster in hand. That's what he's planning. Ulani's going to block and get that trigger off. Divine Guardian is going to really help Mino in this. Save him a turn to hopefully come back into the game and draw into some removal draw into some damage that can go straight face. Even though he's far away and hasn't gotten any physical hits in on Werfs. We have to remember Werfs is down to 8. And Mino's moving into double collection defensively. Cobalt Warbeast, happy to see that. Fits into the angry archetype.
All right,
I'm going to
I
place
am
that
back again.
offensively. Ulani has taunt, though.
Yeah, Ulani's was a great pickup at the time for Minocaro, as well as the Divine Guardian being on the far side. Talked about that a bit in the last game, but in this situation, it's actually potentially really important to give Minocaro the time to maybe find the Flame Burst to end the game. As you mentioned, Werfs is getting really low on life.
Another Bloodsinger is a great...
Not necessarily a bad spot for Minocaro now. The Garridan reset from Werfs is contested by Ulani, Wind Soldier, Derelict Tower, and then getting that Bloodsinger down afterwards does potentially mean, oh, I like this.
Yeah.
I thought Minocaro was setting up to kill the Garridan, but he's setting up a line where he can go Wind Soldier to the face and actually just win with Wind Soldier Flame Burst next turn.
Right, Werfs has to sense that as well. That's the only reason you would double neutral there. Could technically fall back. Looks like Mino's got it.
Werfs could have played around that there. He could have created a couple more lands and then moved Garridan so that there couldn't be a proper desert position for the Wind Soldier to come down, but didn't matter because Minocaro drew the Flame Burst that he needed anyway.
Yeah. Well, that was unexpected. These decks, huh?
Yeah, definitely unexpected to see essentially a control burn come out from Minocaro.
Right.
Werfs with the Angry, also very interesting. I've been hoping that kind of archetype was going to make a comeback. But the burn, we saw red yellow kind of mirror match, or I guess the burn was kind of the mirror match coming out in game number 2. But Minocaro had been away for a little while and comes back strong showing here.
Yeah, and these, I was I saw Destructive Volley in a lot of Werfs decks, and I understand that because I know Yellow Flyers has been really popular on the ladder, but in these matchups, it didn't really have much value.
Yeah, that was definitely Werfs game planning.
Yeah, so we have Minnow taking the series 3-0 and moving on to the next round. We'll see who's up next.